Hi guys, my name is Elizabeth and I am a labor and delivery nurse and certified childbirth educator here with another video for you. This is the third video. So my first one was my unmedicated birth story. I also have an epiduralized birth story that I posted 3 years ago with my daughter, and then I have pros and cons of an epidural, and then this one is going to be 10 things that your labor nurse wants you to know about having a baby without an epidural. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First thing that your labor nurse wants you to know about having a baby without an epidural is that you can do it. That's right, you right there, you pregnant mama watching this, you can have a baby without an epidural. Your body was made to do this and you can totally do this. I have this spiel, I talked about it in my birth story. This is kind of my general beliefs on epidurals, is that anybody can have a baby without an epidural. Anybody. Obviously you'd have to be a pregnant woman, but anybody can do it if a vaginal delivery is something that's going to be possible, and for some people it's not, for a myriad of reasons. But if a vaginal delivery is something that is possible for you, you can have a baby without an epidural. You probably can't all do it gracefully. I am not somebody who had a graceful unmedicated delivery, but you can do it, because this is how I view a lot of things in parenting. But back in caveman days, what did we do? They had babies without epidurals. So you can do it. So that's number one. You can do this, okay? You don't have to do it. You don't have to want to do it, but you can do this. Your body can do this. You were made to do this. The second thing that your labor nurse wants you to know is that education is so important. Clearly, I love to educate. I also love to talk, which got pointed out in another video. Yes, I love to educate and I love to talk. And education about the birthing process and what goes into it is so important for you to have before you go into labor. It gives you a little bit more feeling of control over how you react to situations when you know what to expect. So I'm a big fan of doing a birthing class. Obviously watching YouTube videos can be really helpful. Just making sure that you're getting your information from a really good source, not like your great Aunt Bertha who delivered 50 years ago using twilight sleep, because that's not going to be relevant anymore. But listening to other people's birth stories, not people who are trying to scare you, but just listening to unmedicated birth stories, doing your research, reading your books. There are a lot of classes that kind of help people have unmedicated births. There are different methods. The Bradley method, hypnobirthing. I've seen great success with both of those methods, just to kind of name a few. But doing some sort of childbirth education, particularly if you have one at your hospital, that will include like a hospital tour and what to expect when you go to the hospital. So when you go, you know what to expect. Every hospital has a different policy as far as what their monitor is going to look like, and it's just really kind of nice to know what to expect, especially for your specific hospital or birth center or what have you. And that's obviously something that you can discuss with your doctor. Sometimes the doctors don't know the very specific ins and outs of the policy because they're not the ones enacting every like caveat of the policy during the shift like the nurse would. And so that's why those birthing classes are typically taught by people who are either associated with the hospital or nurses themselves from the unit, to kind of go over what to expect when you arrive. For example, at my hospital we do intermittent monitoring, but when you first get there we like to get a strip of the baby on the actual electronic monitoring that prints out, so that we can just make sure that baby is looking good and tolerating labor well. And then after that, as long as baby's tolerating everything well, we can just listen with the Doppler. Some places will want you to do 20 minutes on the monitor, 40 minutes off the monitor every hour, and split it up like that. And so if you kind of know what to expect going in, you're not going to be as thrown for a loop when they're trying to put you on the monitor and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was going to have to be on the monitor, I didn't know what was going on. So that can be really helpful. Number 4, another reason why that birthing class is so important is because it's going to help teach you when to go into the hospital, okay? You don't want to go in, obviously consult with your doctor, and this is different, you know, based on your personal circumstance, but when you are in that early phase of labor, where things are, you're having some contractions, they're not regular, they're a little uncomfortable, not too crazy, you know, your water hasn't broken yet, that kind of phase of labor, it's really nice to be able to stay at home and to kind of have the education to know and to not freak out that this is what's happening to your baby. So if you stay at home longer, you are less likely to have unnecessary interventions, and which could result in a C-section or an epidural, and obviously consult with your doctor. You need to be able to trust your healthcare provider, and perhaps if you have some other issues, if you're group B strep positive, you might need to go in a little bit earlier. But it's nice to do that early part of labor at home where you can eat and you can rest. And then when you are needing a little bit more guidance, you think you're getting close to baby, going into the hospital. With that whole part, the nice thing about discussing things with your doctor too is often during the week, if you want to go in and get your cervix checked in the office, if you think you might be in early labor but you're not sure because you've never done this before, you can go in and get your cervix checked, which can be really nice for you to figure out where you are, and maybe you're a little bit more dilated than you thought and it is time to head to hospital, or maybe it's gonna be another couple of days and you know that without having to drag into the hospital, try to figure that out there, extended monitoring, you know, it gets a little defeated feeling when you're in and out of the hospital multiple times in that early labor phase, and sometimes that can take a few days to really get things off the ground. And often if you are in that prodromal kind of labor where like things are you know, you're having contractions, they're uncomfortable, but they're not changing your cervix, your body's trying to change the baby's position in some way, because the baby isn't really hitting your cervix in the right way. And so there are lots of different things that you can do at home to help the baby get into the very best position possible. And you can do them in the hospital as well, but it's just, I'm a big fan of the comfort of your own home, your own bed, your own germs. Yeah, so staying home as long as possible, as long as is recommended by your doctor and is safe for the situation, is going to be really helpful in helping you have an unmedicated delivery. So kind of part of that I touched on is when you stay home longer, you're less likely to have unnecessary interventions. So I think a lot of doctors are getting much better at realizing that labor actually takes a lot longer than we initially thought. There was some thought that, you know, active labor starts at 4 centimeters and then you should be dilating 1 centimeter every hour. And now we know that active labor doesn't actually start till 6 centimeters. And I think we're less about watching the clock than we used to be, which is awesome, and just letting moms' bodies, as long as mom and baby are happy and healthy and safe, do their thing and what they were meant to do. But with that being said, sometimes there might be interventions that are proposed to you, such as adding Pitocin or breaking your water or something along those lines. And sometimes those are helpful and necessary if your labor has truly stalled, your cervix isn't changing. But if your cervix is changing slowly, you can always kind of defer those interventions. Definitely have that conversation with your doctor about, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this? You know, am I having issues with my safety? Is my baby having issues with their safety that we're trying to speed things along? But in general, they're going to give you the option like, do you want me to break your water? It'll make things go faster, but breaking your water tends to make things more intense. And if you're trying to have a baby without an epidural, it's nice to have that little extra cushion. And even if it takes a little bit longer, it's a little bit less intense. Now at the end, yes, sometimes breaking the water, wham bam, thank you ma'am, have a baby. But if we're in a little bit of that earlier phases of labor, or if we are at the point where active labor is just beginning and it's your first baby, sometimes those interventions bang things up a few notches and it gets to be overwhelming, and it might be that you decide to have an epidural. So holding off on those interventions, and I have to reiterate, I'm not telling you to like not trust your doctor, but to ask your doctor, you know, why are we doing this? Is it okay if we wait? Is it okay if we're patient and give my body a little bit more time? I think can be really helpful in having an unmedicated delivery. And I think a lot of doctors now are realizing, okay, this takes longer than we thought. Number 6, that kind of goes along with this, and this is my own personal practice. And again, touch base with your doctor and see how they practice things, your doctor, your midwife. But for me personally, when I'm taking care of a laboring woman, I don't check I'll check their cervix when they first come in, and I always make sure, you know, you want to get permission to check somebody's cervix. It's a sensitive place to be, and so I'm always like, is it okay if we check your cervix just to see how dilated we are? We want to verify that the baby's head down. But then after that, I if you don't want an epidural, I feel no need to check your cervix unless it's going to change something that we're doing, right? So I would check your cervix if you were feeling like you needed to push, if you were thinking about changing your mind on what kind of pain medication you wanted. I would check your cervix if the baby was maybe having some decelerations or there was something weird going on and I wanted to assess where we were in the labor process. The doctor might come in and do that, and also just to kind of see where we are in the labor process. But if checking your cervix is not going to change how you are laboring, sometimes it can be a little bit discouraging. There is a reason to be checking your cervix, like let's say we're getting induced and we're trying to see if the medication is working appropriately. You can always ask that the doctor tells your support person what your cervix is, or you can have them say, you know, yes, we've made some change. No, we haven't made some change. Or yes, it's time to push. No, it's not quite time to push yet. Instead of hearing those numbers. Because I think sometimes people get really caught up on those numbers. And those numbers mean, what is my cervix doing right now in a snapshot of time? It's not probably going to get less dilated, but it could get rapidly more dilated very quickly. And sometimes our body gets a little bit ahead of our cervix and you come in rip-roaring labor and you're like, oh goodness, oh my gosh. And they check you and you're 4. And you're like, I'm only 4. Well, I can't do this for X number more hours. I'm just gonna get an epidural. Where if we just kind of waited an hour, we would be ready to have a baby. So limiting vaginal checks, and again, discussing with your doctor, if they want to check you, you know, why are we doing this? And I think can be really helpful, or not getting told the specific number, just to kind of keep you in that mindset, that head game. Another thing that is going to be really important when you are laboring without an epidural is that you are getting up and moving and changing positions. There are tons of YouTube videos, tons of different research about great positions for labor, and I'm not going to go into all of those now, but just to be up and moving and changing position, readjusting things, squatting, lunges, walking, all of those lovely things. And you're not going to want to be lying in the bed, more than likely. That is going to be like the #1 most uncomfortable position. Now, for whatever reason, if you need to be on the monitor, and sometimes you will, if you are getting Pitocin, you will need to be on the monitor. If you're high risk, you might need to be on the monitor for whatever reason. Being on the monitor does not mean lying in the bed on your back. Being on the monitor, often you will have, sorry, my child, often you will have telemetry monitoring, which is where you get this like little cool purse that you'll wear around that your monitors are plugged into, and it'll communicate wirelessly with the monitor. Or if your hospital doesn't have that, or for some reason it's not working, because sometimes those tend to slide around if you've got one of those like perfectly round bellies, you can still be standing next to the monitor, sitting on the birthing ball next to the monitor. Your bed probably can do all sorts of crazy cool different positions to help you get in hands and knees, squatting, just lying on your back. It might be the easiest way for you to be monitored. And obviously sometimes it's really important that we see what that baby is doing and what your contractions are doing. But the more you can be up and mobile, and your nurse should be able to give you lots of ideas if you're stuck to the monitor. And if you're not stuck to the monitor, they should be able to give you lots of ideas based on what your cervix is doing, what your labor is doing, all those good things. Can be very helpful. So be up and moving, up and moving, up and moving, and changing position quite frequently, and changing what you're doing. Going along with that, in the beginning parts, in the early parts of labor, if we're trying to get things going, what I tell people is I want you to do what makes it more uncomfortable. So if walking is making it more uncomfortable, we're going to do that. Then when we get into that active part of labor where you're really having to work through those contractions, then what I want to do something that makes it more comfortable, that makes them more tolerable. And we're going to do that until it doesn't work anymore. We're going to move on to the next thing on our list. We're going to go through the whole list, and then we might go back up to the top. But doing what makes them more comfortable until it doesn't work anymore. Doing what works and helps the contractions, makes them more tolerable until it doesn't work anymore, and then we kind of go from there. And going along with that, never making the decision to get an epidural while you are in the middle of a contraction. So the nice thing about contractions, when they are just totally brought on and spontaneous, often you're going to have one that's really intense, one that's not so bad. They're going to vary a little bit in how far apart they are. And so kind of get through the contraction, do whatever you're doing to get through the contraction, and then go back and evaluate, okay, I made it through that one, I'm good. Never make the decision to quit on your worst day, to quit on your worst second. Because with contractions, we know that you're gonna have a little break, they're gonna go away, and they're doing something. You are gonna have a baby. Kind of going along with all of this, I think it's really important to have a good, supportive birth partner, be that your spouse or significant other, your mother. Some people really find success in hiring a doula, and I've been asked my opinion on doulas, and I personally love doulas. I love working with a doula, but not all doulas are created equally, just like not all doctors are created equally and not all nurses are created equally, and that's just kind of how it is. We know that there are some that are great and some that are not so great. So finding one that you personally really click with, who comes with good references and recommendations, can be really helpful, and maybe one that's even worked at your hospital before so that they know the policies and what they need to be doing. But yeah, I'm a fan of doulas. I think that they can be a really integral part of the unmedicated laboring process. And even if you end up with an epidural, a doula can be great. I love postpartum doulas too. I think the postpartum period does not get, women do not get enough care during that. Our health system is a mess. Another story for another day. But yeah, having a really good labor support person is gonna be key. And it might just be that their presence is all you need. You might be one of those people who labors kind of internally, doesn't want anybody touching them or talking to them. You might be one of those women who needs somebody to talk you through it. I have a whole video on tips for labor support people that I will link below. But yeah, it's really good to have a support system and to give you support in whichever way you deem fit. And you might not know exactly what that is until you go into labor, but having somebody there who you trust and who kind of knows what's going to be going on, because either they have educated themselves some with you, ideally, or as a doula, is really going to be helpful. Last tip is something that I kind of said to myself a lot when I was in labor, and I think it's just having a mantra, something that you are gonna repeat to yourself over and over again that's gonna get you through the contractions. And there are a lot of different ones, but mine that I really just repeated in my head is that your contractions cannot be stronger than you. They are you. This is me. This is my body working. My contractions can't be stronger than me. They are me. My contractions can't be stronger than me. They are me. And I would just repeat that in my head as I was having the contraction, as I was remembering to breathe. And that really helped me stay in control, because being in control of how you're reacting to what's happening to you is really, really important. And for every person, control is going to look different. For some people, control might be that crazy low guttural moaning and moving their hips and going with it. For control, some people might be silent. But being in control of how you're feeling, and it's not about having control over what's going on, it's just being in control of how you're reacting to it, is going to be really helpful. Because once you lose that control, and a lot of women do right during transition, and it's totally fine, but you want to kind of keep it up to that point if you're able to, because once you lose that control, it's really hard to get a wrap back on your emotions and back on being able to kind of deal with what's happening to you, because what's happening to you is really intense. And once you lose that control, it can be really difficult to stay relaxed. And relaxation is gonna be key. You'll probably dilate either way, but a relaxed cervix, a relaxed pelvic floor, relaxed pelvic muscles are going to dilate much better than somebody who's tensed in doing this. So your mantra is going to help keep you in control, hopefully help keep you relaxed, and your support people will do that too, and all of your education and your knowledge help keep you relaxed until that baby is here with us. And then you're gonna look down and be like, oh my gosh, look what I did. This is amazing, because you are amazing. So no matter if you choose to have an epidural or you choose to go unmedicated out in the woods somewhere, you are amazing. You grew another human being in your womb for 9-ish months, and then you birthed them. And maybe your birth was a C-section. And you know what? You're amazing too. You had major abdominal surgery. You showed that baby how much you loved it by having your body cut into and the baby taken out. And that's amazing. I'm in awe of women, basically. And my point is that no matter how you choose to have your baby, no matter how your baby is brought into this world, you are enough and you are a mother. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little epidural unmedicated delivery series. Leave comments, questions, concerns, video ideas down below. I'd also love to hear your birth stories if you want to share. Bye guys.